Well, hello, confirmands. It is good to see you. I hope you are well. I hope you are making progress on your preparations for Christmas and that you're in good shape at school. Work hard. Do all your work before vacation so vacation can just be a joy. That's my free, unsolicited advice. Anyway, we are in year 2 of confirmation, the life of Christ. This is lesson 12. We're going to be talking about miracles of healing for lepers. We'll get to that in a second, but just a quick programming note or two. Remember that on this coming Wednesday, the 21st, we flip to peace. If you go to Nelsonville, you're going to find a dark, locked church. Now, if you're a Nelsonville member, your family probably has a key. You can let yourself in. You can sit there in the dark. It's peaceful. It's relaxing. It's a beautiful place. But you will not be part of the discussion group because that's going to be taking place at peace. We are actually, about halfway through the year, a little less because Lent is coming. That's 6 weeks and we'll flip back and forth again in Lent. But we have finished the part of the year where we're every week at Nelsonville. And now we're into the part of the year where we're every week at peace. Again, accepting those few weeks of Lent when the soup suppers are over at Nelsonville. So on the 21st, we are going to be at peace. 7 o'clock is the in-person and 8 o'clock is the online discussion group. We're also going to go short on this lesson because, as you're aware, on the 14th, we had to cancel. Whenever school cancels, we cancel. If school cancels afternoon and evening programming, we cancel. It doesn't have to make sense. You don't have to understand it. Sometimes I don't understand it, but that is the rule. It's the easiest for families so that we don't have families confused about what's going on. We'll always put something up on Facebook. We'll always send a blast email. We'll always put something on the confirmation page of the church website. I say always. I suppose we'll mess that up sooner or later, but that is the intention. But it's real easy. If the Tomorrow River School District closes or cancels, we close, we cancel. So on the 21st, we're going to be talking about 2 lessons. Lesson 11, Women and Outsiders, and this lesson 12, the Healing of Lepers. So the homework reflects that I need you to do a question from each of the lessons, and then you can ask anything that's on your mind. Anything that has anything to do with the faith that's troubling you, that's bothering you, that you're wondering about, you can ask those questions as well. So we'll jump in. We're talking about Jesus healing lepers, and we're going to start with the first couple words of the phrase that pays. Remind your. Now, leprosy now is a disease. It's called Hansen's disease. It's a bacterial disease. It can be cured with antibiotics. Several antibiotics over the course of 6 months to a year. If you don't get the antibiotics, bad things can happen to you. But it is a chronic curable disease. It's very rare. There's only about 20,000 cases or less in the United States in any given year. Remember, there's about 340 million of us now. So it's very rare. It's spread by droplets. So, wearing a mask would help. But again, this is not something you need to worry about. First, because it's very rare. Second, because it's curable. So that's not what we're talking about. In the Bible, leprosy is any number of skin diseases, skin rashes, discolorations, weird looking stuff that has weird hair growing out of it, anything that's odd or goofy about the skin. Obviously sores and weeping injuries and all of that. If you want to read the whole deal, you go to Leviticus, Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, third book in the Old Testament, and chapters 13 and 14 deal in absolutely exhausting detail about leprosy, which is what they called all of these different skin diseases and afflictions, rashes, ailments, sores, the whole deal. Bottom line, it was bad to have these things. It was bad. If you had any of them, you had to go be inspected by the priest. And if the priest decided that you were unclean, and there are, again, all these checks that the priest would go through, if you're unclean, you are thrown out of society. You cannot live in town anymore. You can't live with your family. You can't live with your children. You can't care for your parents. You can't work a job. You are out because they didn't want these diseases to spread. And so you live outside town. The disease takes its course, whatever it is, from minor and aggravating to profoundly serious, right? The disease runs its course. If you have to come into town, you have to cover your upper lip, cover your mouth, and you have to scream, unclean, unclean, unclean. And if you don't, they kill you. Right? Because they don't want the infection to spread in the community. So to be a leper is to be cast out. You can't touch a leper. If you touch a leper, you're cast out. You're unclean because, again, we're worried about transmission of these weird skin diseases, right? So when we're talking about leprosy in the Bible, it's about as bad as it can get because it cuts you off society completely. There are ways back in, if whatever the skin ailment you have sorts itself out, you can go back to the priest and you can get reinstated into society. But this is a big deal, and to have it is to be out. To touch people is to become unclean yourself. It's a big, big deal. Jesus, as a rabbi, knows these rules. He's not supposed to have anything to do with lepers. He's not supposed to encourage lepers. He's not supposed to talk to them directly. These are people who are a danger to the community. Next couple words of the phrase that pays: parents, confirmation. Parents, confirmation. All right, so there's two stories that I've reproduced for you here, one from Mark and one from Luke. So in Mark's story, a leper comes to Jesus. He begs him. He kneels before him. He says, "If you choose, you can make me clean." Now, nobody can make the leper clean, right? The way we deal with lepers is that we kick them out of society because it's hopeless. And so, this is a remarkable thing he says to Jesus, that he sees something that all the good people, all the religious people, all the people who are in town, all the people who are, able to go to temple, none of them see. And Jesus is moved with pity. He stretches out his hand. He touches the leper, which is supposed to make him unclean, right? But it doesn't. Jesus says, "I do choose, be made clean." And immediately this skin disease, whatever it is, leaves the guy, right? So Jesus tells them, don't tell anybody about this, right? But go and show yourself to the priest, offer the sacrifice that Moses commands, do everything that you're supposed to do as a testimony to them, right? The guy knows he's been cured. Right? His family's going to know. But Jesus says this is a testimony to the priests. So Jesus has done this impossible thing. And now he sends the guy as an ambassador to the priests who are supposed to know what God's up to, who are supposed to be telling the people what to look up for. Right? And then the guy instead goes out and starts telling everybody. That was pretty much a given, right? Because he's not supposed to be in town. If he's in town, people are going to have questions. Why aren't you covering your mouth? Why aren't you screaming unclean? Right? So there was really no way this guy could keep a secret unless he moved, to some far corner of the universe, right, where no one had ever met him or his family. But if he's going to go home, people are going to know. If he's going to go to the priest, people are going to know. The priest is going to declare him clean, and people are going to know. So he tells everybody, the word spreads, and at the end of the story, Jesus can't go into town. The guy can. That Jesus has taken his place. Martin Luther once tried to explain what happens between us and Jesus by talking about what happens when a prince marries a woman with debts. That at the moment that they are married, all of his resources flow to her, and all of her debts flow to him. Luther called this the glorious exchange, that when we become followers of Christ, when Christ chooses us, right, makes us his own in our baptism, all of our brokenness flows to him, and all of his holiness, all of his forgiveness, all of his love, all of his resources flow to us. And we see that in this story, that the leper starts out of town and winds up in town. Jesus touches him and heals him, winds up out of town. He can't go into town openly anymore, but people are out looking for him, right? So that's story number one. The next two words of the phrase that pays is at. Is at. Now, second story is from Luke. On the way to Jerusalem, Jesus is going through the region between Samaria and Galilee. So he's up north, he's in the borderlands. He enters a village and 10 lepers approach him. Now these guys, again, are taking their lives in their hands. They're not allowed to approach Jesus. They're not allowed to talk to him. They're not doing the covered mouth, unclean thing. So they're in trouble. And they say to him, Jesus, Master, have mercy on us. And as he sees them, he tells them, just go show yourself to the priest, right? And as they went, they're healed. There's something really cool in that the blessing of God follows their obedience. I mean, if they had just disobeyed him, they wouldn't have been healed. If they hadn't gone to the priests, they wouldn't have been healed. If they hadn't gotten up, they wouldn't have been healed. If they continue to lay there, right, or to stand there, whatever it was they were doing, without doing what Jesus told them to do, they wouldn't have been healed. They get healed on the way. That's something I want you to think about. That blessing follows obedience. You wonder why you don't hear God's voice? You wonder why it seems like God's a long way away? Well, are you doing the stuff God commands you to do? Start doing that stuff, and you're going to feel a whole lot closer to God. You're going to hear a whole lot more from God. At any rate, these 10, they find themselves healed, and they're just spectacularly happy. 9 of them keep going, doing what Jesus told them to do. But one starts to praise God with a loud voice. He turns around and he comes and he lays down at Jesus' feet and he thanks him. And who was it? Was it a good Jewish boy? No, it was a Samaritan. Remember, we hate Samaritans if we're Jews. Right? We've been fighting with them for hundreds and hundreds of years. We've been fighting about racial stuff, about religious stuff. We don't like them at all. And Jesus is gobsmacked. He's startled. He says, weren't 10 made clean, and the only one who comes back is this foreigner? Right? Where are the other 9? And then he says to the man, get up and go on your way. Your faith has made you well. Now, again, you got to be clear here. He's not made well because he's thankful. He's made well as he obeys Jesus. He's made well because Jesus saw fit to heal him. But the thank you part, the honoring God part, that's a special thing. That gives him a word from Jesus. That gives him an assurance from Jesus that he, that this is not a passing thing, that he's not going to break out again in whatever it is tomorrow or next week, that he's been made well and that he now lives in this relationship of faith and love with Jesus. So 2 stories about Jesus touching people that he shouldn't touch, healing people who can't be healed, setting people free who are bound, and in one case, taking on the exile, and in the other case, reminding us that there is no line between people in God's sight, not racial lines, not national lines, that we're all equally the children of God. Last word of the phrase that pays is the word peace. All right, so I'll leave you with that. Look forward to seeing you this coming Wednesday. You be well. Bye-bye.